Hi, it's Elizabeth Willetts here from Investing in Women, and I am delighted because we are here today with Elizabeth Cowper from the WoMo Network, and we are live on Facebook and LinkedIn. Really, really excited to talk today about what has happened to women during the past year. So during the COVID pandemic, we're going to have a really lively discussion and get lots of advice as well on what we can do to help ourselves and what organisations can do to help us moving forward. But yeah, we are live on Facebook and LinkedIn. It's Elizabeth Willetts from Investing in Women, and I am delighted to be joined by Elizabeth Cowper from the WoMo Network, and we're going to be talking all about women and what's happened to us during the past year, because it's been it's 15 months, hasn't it? So it's been over a year. So it's been an eventful period. And yeah, we're going to go into that. But do you want to just introduce us to yourself and what who the WoMo Network is?
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. Two Elizabeths at the same time. It's
I know, it's exciting.
It so is. So I'm Elizabeth. I'm a mum of 3. I've got 2 daughters who are 16 and 18. So I've just had my eldest finish school, which is a complete shocker. And my youngest is 5, and he's about to go into year 1 in September. So I've got just a little casual gap in the middle. I've had a career of over 20 years in HR. And I've been lucky enough to work for some amazing brands like LVMH, Harvey Nichols, more recently Tapestry, that own Coach, Kate Spade, and Stuart Weitzman.
Oh my gosh, they were
I know.
I didn't know you were
I've been
there.
so lucky. And I've had an amazing career and been super lucky, not necessarily by design, but ended up working for lovely brands. And I have always worked full time. I've always juggled my 3 kids and working full time. And particularly with my last job at Tapestry, I traveled a lot and it was super challenging. Mm-hmm. And by the very nature of working in HR, I've seen hundreds of maternity leaves and managed them through my career of people going off in different businesses. And I think we have a gaping hole in how we manage female talent and look after them through this life-changing journey of having a baby. So I stepped out of corporate life in April 2020.
Okay, so quite recently.
Yeah, into lockdown 1. So that was interesting timing, to build a tech platform called WoMo Network, which is a sort of offspring of a website I've run for 6 years. WoMo meaning working mother. And it's all about really supporting the working mother through that massive journey. And it's a platform that sits between the employer and employee and basically transforms the whole world of maternity.
Wow. I didn't know you worked for... So what was your other company before? The website before?
So WoMoNetwork.com is the website I set up about 6 years ago. And that was really when I had my 3rd child, and I was sitting there one night, probably at 2 a.m., breastfeeding or something horrendous, thinking, how do we support women that are going through this? And they're passionate, they've got a job, they love what they do. And then this little tiny person arrives and everything about your purpose is up in the air. And you are thinking, hold on, I had this whole life and now it's been thrown up in the air with this tiny baby, and both are great, but how do I do them both? So I went on a mission to find support out there for working mums and couldn't find what I thought was what I wanted. So I partnered with Annie and we built the website. She built it for me.
And this was 6 years ago.
6 years ago. And then the idea for the tech platform came from that, really, just from working in HR, seeing the challenges of working mums, knowing how challenging it can be for organizations to retain their female talent and for the woman to feel valued, looked after. Add in the need for a really good wellbeing strategy and a D&I strategy and all the other really important agenda items for HR. The 2 things kind of came to me together of, hey, we can help the companies and the employees and do something brilliant for women having babies. And then the idea was born. And I stepped out of corporate life to build it.
Wow. So you've been going just over a year, really? Was it like a blog before? Was it sort of a resource?
The website's still up, so you can see it. It's got blogs, information, tips. We do this interview series called Meet the WoMos, which I love.
I did that.
Yes, we've got you on there. I know. I love it because I love reading the interviews. It's so good to hear all about how other working mums do it. And it's one of the most clicked on parts of the website. And I think that's because innately as working mums, we have moments of, oh my gosh, how can I do this? This is so hard. And reading about how other women have faced those challenges, I think is super interesting for other women. And that's why I think we get the most clicks on that part. And then the offspring from the tech platform came from that. And we've had the tech platform running for 4 months in beta testing, but from the 1st of July, we're now live in selling into companies to support their HR and WoMos.
Brilliant. All right, so we'll talk a bit more about the platform in a bit, but I think it's quite interesting because you've obviously been like a working mum before obviously still working mum, but you were in a corporate position when you had your two elder children, and then you've now become self-employed. So it's been quite a pivot, but it's an interesting journey. So it'll be interesting. How did you find the juggle when you were like working in corporate with your?
Oh, you know what? It's had its moments and it's so hard. And I know we might talk a little bit about guilt later. And I thought about this. I thought, when are the times I have felt the most guilty? And it's a question we ask actually in the Meet the WoMos interview, is how you combat mum guilt. And I've had guilt. I have missed school plays. I have missed parents' evenings. I've not been there for sports day. And it's been tough. And I made a promise to myself early on that if it wasn't me, it was their father. If it wasn't him and he was working, because he worked in the film business, it was their grandma. If it wasn't their grandma, it was the nanny. If it wasn't the nanny, it was someone else. But somebody was there championing and cheering on my children. But now I've got teenagers who are 16 and 18. I've actually talked to them about this now and said to them, I've missed stuff. I haven't been there. Yeah. And one of the most lovely things to hear from them is, Mum, we don't care, because when you were there, it was brilliant. We were really excited. And there was always somebody there for us. And when they repeated that back to me, without me having said that was my little strategy many years ago, I felt like that's good. They felt supported, and it wasn't a total disaster that I wasn't there all the time. But I felt a lot of guilt around that.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to talk about, you've got some stats, haven't you? Some figures. So what has happened to women in the workplace and generally in the past 15 months?
It has been horrendous. And I have got some stats that I wanted to share with you because I just think it's really relevant to ground us into the impact on women and what's happened over the pandemic. So there's a report by Deloitte. There's some information, the ONS, and then the website Pregnant Then Screwed. And that's where I've got these different data points from studies that have been done. So industries that employ a high proportion of women, so that's retail, tourism and hospitality, have been especially hit, as we know. But because they employ more women have lost their roles. And through this research by Deloitte, 82% of women in this report said their lives had been negatively disrupted by the pandemic. And 70% of those 82% felt concerned about their impact to progress in their career. And these are big numbers. 25% of mums said their employers had not shown them flexibility when they were trying to juggle their jobs with childcare. And you think kids at home, homeschooling, think of all the challenges we've had this year. 49% of mums felt they should send their kids back to nursery when nurseries opened because of their job, even when they didn't feel particularly comfortable, or they were still anxious, or they had a COVID situation that was making them nervous. And then mothers during the pandemic were 47% more likely than fathers to have permanently lost their jobs or resigned due to childcare issues, and 14% more likely to have been furloughed. And these are just some of the numbers. So we know there's been a huge impact on women. And experts predict the effect of the pandemic will delay the closing of the gender pay gap by potentially decades, which was a headline in the report by the Harvard Business Review that really shocked me. You think of all the work we've done with the gender pay gap, and this has set us back a really, really long way. And we know that we're really working hard from an HR perspective to really support the whole D&I agenda and close the gender pay gap. And actually, this has given everyone a massive kick, which is horrible.
It's interesting what you say. So obviously, we've all read the news. We know that the industries that have been impacted are hospitality and retail that employ a high proportion of women. And actually, when you think about it, the jobs that are exploded probably during the pandemic and recently are jobs that potentially, rightly or wrongly, are maybe more popular with males. Go all the way down from delivery, drive. Just thinking of myself, whenever I get an Amazon delivery, it's always a man that delivers, and that's fine. But then all the way up to like tech roles, they're obviously exploding as well. And tech is really females are really disproportionately represented within technology. So only 17% of employees across tech are women. Half of women drop out by the age of 35, and only 8% of developers are women.
Wow. That's
and they're the jobs that are
exploding.
Yeah, and they're the jobs that are exploding at the moment. And I mean, and it obviously it's going to take a while for women to maybe move into tech. It probably starts in education and encouraging young girls to take up those subjects. But yeah, it's quite interesting to think that more female jobs have been disproportionately affected, but more male jobs are increasing. So I wonder what that's going to have an even bigger impact on the gender pay gap. And it's quite scary.
It's really scary. And this is why we need to focus as businesses and to really look at how we support women in the workplace and what are the things we can be doing to really make a shift and recover from the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, I was speaking to a recruiter about it the other day, actually, because they were crying out for tech people. And I mean, this is something I floated, and I think maybe employees could be a bit more open to retraining some women that have maybe fallen out of other industries, and retraining them into some of these industries that are increasing in hiring, if they are open to that.
No, absolutely. I think if somebody's open to it and wants to learn, then absolutely, why not?
Yeah.
Definitely.
I mean, the pushback from them was, it's, they want someone to come in and hit the ground running. But I mean, I'm sure it's a steep learning curve, but you give someone 3 months of training, then you never know what they're going to be like in 3 months' time. And that would be something that would be really positive, I think, for women in the workplace.
No, I totally agree.
Having opportunities to retrain in industries that are growing. So.
Exactly. In fact, one of the things we said we'd talk about today is how can businesses support their employees?
Yeah.
One of those parts is having good training in the workplace and offering it fairly to everybody, rather than, as you say, even if it's a microaggression or very small discrimination or an expectation that men should do this job and women that should do that job. We need to move away from that and just revolutionize the way we look at jobs. And it's about skill set and also who wants to do it. Someone raises their hand and they say, I'd like to train in that. We don't dismiss them, and we give them equal chances for skills training and promotion. So it's really important.
Really important. I mean, I think as well, it's interesting. We have the grad schemes that would be training people in these tech roles, for example. And I know that some firms offer returnships, but they're not nowhere near in the same numbers as the grad schemes. And I think that's quite a shame, and they're really missing a trick. And I mean, even if they actually recruit people in the same cohort and put people more or less on the same scheme, then that would be a positive potentially for women and other people to retrain. But
no, absolutely. Just thinking back to your comment about tech, I remembered this brilliant, I don't know if Elizabeth Tweedale, who I've heard speak before. Do you know Elizabeth Tweedale? No. She's founded, I just wanted to check the name, Cypher Coders. It's the right name. And so she's a female founder. She founded Cypher Coders, and it's all about teaching kids to code. And she's a female founder, really championing kids and championing, girls and getting kids coding. So just going back to your point about less women in coding, I think that's a really good opportunity, as we're raising our children, to think about, hang on, are we as parents boxing our kids before they even get to that stage? Can we think, well, I've got daughters, why can't they code, or why can't they do jobs that might typically be seen for a man? And I think it's shifting it at the parent level, and I know we're both parents, of thinking about it in a different way.
It's interesting. Do you know what? Because this is just a little bit going off the subject, but I took my daughter. I've tried to never be like, these are girls' toys, these are boys' toys. And my daughter, they do have dolls, but they have, cars and train sets.
Yeah.
I took her to the toy shop, and then we went past like the Action Men figures. She's like, no, they're boy toys. I thought, actually, I've never said that to her, but that's quite I wondered where she'd got that from. I thought that's quite interesting.
It is fascinating, because I have a 5-year-old son, and he certainly has had, there's a doll in his room. He never picks it up. It's not, and he's all about trains and trucks, but I've encouraged him to play with totally gender neutral toys, but he's having none of it.
Yeah. So we talked about a bit about what's happened to mums during or women just generally during the pandemic. So any other advice for businesses? It would be really interesting to know with your HR hat on.
Yeah.
If you were in HR in a big organization now and you wanted to bring more women into your organization, bring them along, what would be some initiatives that you'd be implementing?
So this is a really interesting time for businesses. Businesses are talking to their employees. Well, I hope they are. Lots of them are. Some of them are implementing new ways of working without talking to employees, but it's important they do talk to them and say, what do you want? Do you want 3 days in, 2 days out? Or are we expecting you in 5 days? And are we always going to all work from home? I'm not saying there's a right and a wrong, because it totally depends on the business, the needs of that business, the culture of that business, and many other factors. What I do think is important is we make flexible working a norm. And I don't just mean for women, I mean for everybody. So this fluidity around, I need to work from home today because I've got to pick my kids up. And I don't care whether it's the dad or the mum, it doesn't matter. Is even if it's the granny who says, I need to leave work today because I'm going to pick up my grandchildren. How do we have this fluidity where anybody can have that kind of flexibility, not just women? So I think flexible working being the norm is a really big push for organizations now. And what that flex looks like may just be a little bit. It may be a day a week. It may be an afternoon. It may be one Friday every 9. It may be 3 days a week. But whatever's right for your business, and do it without being afraid of trying it. So I think one of the things that businesses have been frightened of in the past is doing something and then saying it's not working. Whereas if you stand up to your team in your town hall and say, right, we're going to do this for 3 months and then we're going to review, you're setting expectations from the start that it may not be a permanent fixture, and not to be afraid to try things. I think we have to have a good, strong D&I strategy and a strong wellbeing agenda. So wellbeing in the workplace, my role at Tapestry when I was there before, I led wellbeing there, and the transformation wellbeing in the workplace can have on engagement of all employees is enormous. Happier employees are more productive. It's good for business, but it's also good on an individual person, on the individual basis for each person to look after themselves, be educated on better self-care, and they're less likely to burn out. They're more likely to stay with you if they feel valued and looked after. So a critical piece for me is the wellbeing agenda. And then D&I. And a word that's being thrown around a lot in the HR space at the moment is individualization. So not looking at your employees as a collective, but saying what's different about this person and this person and this person, and how can we help people on a much more individual level to give them what they need in this organization. Another one is having employee groups, and we're talking about working mums today, but having employee groups, they can be run by the teams, not HR. And I would say HR shouldn't run them, incidentally. It should be a volunteer that says, I'm going to form a group of working parents and we're going to come together once every month or whatever it might be, whenever they want. And it could just be a coffee in the morning, but it's time away from the desk, being together or online and sharing stories, sharing experiences, which takes you away from the work, which is a break in itself. It's shifting your mind to a different mindset, and it allows you to share and bounce off each other of ways to do things. The gender pay gap reporting was mandatory from 2017, and they took it away last year because of COVID. And so I think that needs to be back. It's like companies
should report. Is it not coming back in October or?
Yeah, but I think that whether or not you are mandatory, it's a mandatory thing for you to do. Companies should do it anyway. Let's be transparent. Let's be open and really embrace that we are working on the gender pay gap. I think that's really critical for women and men. And lots of men want it. This isn't just the women campaigning, standing on our soapbox. Men definitely want it too. And just understanding the impact of turnover and poor engagement, that it fundamentally costs companies money. You lose the skill set, you lose all the knowledge of that person. Someone's got to train them. It costs the company money. So it's worth making the investment to keep people and look after them. And then just family-friendly policies. I mean, it sounds obvious, but just having policies in place beyond just flexibility that looks after all parents, all family members, anybody who's got, family in place.
Yeah, definitely. A really good idea. Really good tips. And how do you think we can help ourselves as well?
That's a really good question. And I think that the well-being piece is actually really important. And when I was thinking about that, how can we help ourselves? I talk about this sometimes. I do need to talk to cameras on the WoMo Instagram, which I honestly find so embarrassing. I still feel funny about them. Anyway, and I talk about balance, and that actually having it all is a myth. We've got to stop thinking I can have it all and it's all going to be amazing and I'm going to be a brilliant mum and brilliant at work. Balls will get dropped. Things will go wrong. Mistakes will happen. it is going to go wrong. And I think it's actually a self-care thing to say to yourself, I give myself permission for mistakes. They're going to go wrong. And once we let go of this need for perfection everywhere, it does lift the anxiety a little bit and help you out of this. I know I've been there when I feel like I can't breathe and I'm presenting on stage in the office and I've got a sick child. And actually, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to actually tell you a real actual story. And this is going to really admit a really bad mum moment of mine. But my son was, I don't know how old, he just started crawling. And where I used to live, in my old house, there was a door that went down 3 little steps into a classic, Victorian London cellar. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And I left the door open and he crawled and fell down the stairs.
Oh, gosh.
And it was like, it was awful. It was awful. He screamed. It was terrible. I had this huge egg on his head and I threw him in the car and I was like, oh my God, my child. Hysterical. I get him to the hospital and I'm like, oh, he fell down the stairs. I was demented, totally demented. He's sitting there, enormous egg on his head, grinning away at the doctor.
He's fine, yeah. Fine. They seem to bounce, don't they?
It was so horrific. And the doctor said to me, Elizabeth, you need to pull yourself together. Look at him, he's fine. And I was like, oh God, I'm so sorry. I was demented. Anyway, they kept an eye on him for a few hours to check he was fine. And I was flying to New York for work the next morning. And I said to the doctor, when the doctor came back, a different doctor, I'm meant to be traveling for work and I can't go. And it was like one of the world's worst moments of I really need to be there with my child, who's not even one. And I also need to be on an airplane to New York and be far away. And the doctor said to me, I'm a parent. He's fine. Get on that plane. And that's all I needed to hear was someone gave me permission to basically leave my injured child at home and get on that plane. And he was fine. And yes, he had a big egg on his head and it went to a black eye. But it's just one of those really big parent moments for me of, you know what? I actually can't be here with him and be in New York. And I'm going to have to make a compromise decision here that some people might think is pretty shocking. And so I'm saying it here now on this live that I did that. And I made the nanny send me photos every day. Like, is it worse? How's his head? Is he all right? And he's completely fine. And he's none the wiser for it. And it's all fine. But I tell the story because there's going to be loads of moments like that. And how do you sit with that? And what do you do for you to look after you in those moments where you've screwed up something at work, or you haven't turned up at the school play, or you sent your child to school in normal uniform on mufti day, or I've done them all. And I think that self-care piece of stop and breathe and just know that you've done your best and your best is good enough, and giving yourself acceptance for that. I started meditating about 2 years ago, and that's been transformative for me. I meditate at least once a day, sometimes twice. And that's been totally transformative for me of just when I feel that sense of, I can just take 10 minutes to breathe. And just, and calm down and just breathe. So even if it's 10 minutes, it's, if you've got very young children, it's actually going to the loo and staying in the bathroom for those 10 minutes. I
feel bad. I do that all the time. Do you know what I do today? I'd go in, shut the door, take my phone, I just sit on the toilet. Do you know what this? I'll tell you now, because sometimes I think going for a number 2 is a break. Although they fight, I can hear them fighting outside. So I think this is. It's not that nice.
I swear, I think my children think I do the longest wheeze in the whole wide world. But
you just got to do it.
Wherever you can take 10 minutes of quiet, just do it, honestly. And do not think that's selfish. You know what they say on airplanes? Own oxygen mask first. You've got to be okay to look after everybody else. And do not be afraid of that. If it's like saying, I'm going to go and have a pedicure or a manicure and leave your kids with your husband, or if you're a single parent, a friend, rope in anybody for just half an hour of you time when you can. And I would say that is one of the best things you can do to really look after yourself and have your tribe around you. And as women, I think we're quite good at this, but just who are those people, on speed dial, and know who they are. I mean, I certainly have friends I call to cry, friends I call to rant, friends I call when I just want to have a good old, rage about something at work. And just who's your gang, have them on speed dial, and don't be afraid to call.
The hardest thing actually about this pandemic is not having the mum friends that you can see and talk to. And I've started going now we can on play dates with some other mums, and it's made such a difference.
Yeah, it's so good.
Just seeing,
sharing and connecting is just massive.
Yeah, really good. And then the kids will play, and then you can just drink wine or
gin. Have a glass of wine. Exactly.
But yeah, people are enjoying the tips, so thank you. Thanks, Hannah and Deborah. They've commented saying they're enjoying the tips on LinkedIn. Yeah, I mean, do you know what? I use the TV a lot as well, I'll be perfectly honest. I mean, when my kids get up, I'm like, stick the TV on. I do a workout. That's the only time I can do my exercise. But I do that, and I think, do you know what? I agree with you. It is self-care, isn't it?
It is.
And I think, yeah, and I need that 20 minutes, whatever it is, 20, 30 minutes just for me. And then, to be honest,
that's completely fine. It's complete because that then sets you up to be equipped to deal with what you've got to do for the day. And there is nothing wrong with you taking that time for you. There really isn't. And, I know we touched on guilt earlier, but banish the guilt on that. If you can be a better mum for it and a better WoMo, then do what you've got to do,
Yeah.
And actually setting a good example to your kids of saying to them, you know what, this is what I need for me. And you want them fundamentally to grow up knowing what they need for them. So think of it like you're modeling behavior of self-care. That's another way to think about it.
Really good tips. Okay. And then do you want to talk us through what is a WoMo?
Yeah, I mean, WoMo as in working mother, it is fundamentally our affectionate term for the modern working mother. And when we were brainstorming about the branding of this, I was such a pain, honestly, of no, it's not right, don't know. And then the guy who did the branding for me was like, how about WoMo? I was like, I love it. I like it, yeah. I really love it. It feels, I want it to be a word that's everywhere. I want us to talk about WoMos that's, I want it to be a language in organizations. Yeah, these are our WoMos, and we're a WoMo-friendly organization. And, I trademarked it here and in the US. I was like, right, WoMo, come on, this is my word. It's my word. But it's all about just an affectionate term for the modern working mother fundamentally. And how do we empower, inspire, and lead these women to say, hey, we've got your back. You're in our tribe. We really care about you and we value what you do. And we really want you to feel part of something, that we are in this journey together of saying, hey, I can have a career and I can have a child or two or three or four, and it's completely fine. And, that what I need and what I want to ask for is okay too. And just to give women and WoMos that voice, really.
So what's your platform doing now? So it's evolved, hasn't it? In the past year. So what does your platform offer individuals and organizations?
So the scenario would be, in the old world, you'd go to HR probably 12 weeks pregnant and say, I'm pregnant. And they'd say, congratulations. And you'd have a copy of the company policy and the details of your pay. And, it was great. I mean, that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But, then maybe you'd have a baby shower when you went off. And the really brilliant organizations really keep in touch with the woman when she's off. But most of them don't. And I think that's the part that for me is really important about WoMo. So what happens now is when that mother goes to HR would say, we've subscribed you to WoMo. The company pays the subscription. The mother then gets a log on, and it takes 2 minutes literally for the HR team to send an email to log them onto the platform. The mother goes in and creates her profile. And when she does that, we ask critical questions like, how many kit days would you like to use? How many days, how long do you think you'll be off maternity leave? What's your preferred method of communication and what frequency? And these things can be changed at any time. So if you think you want 6 months off and then it becomes 9, that's fine. You can change it.
So you log in into the portal yourself then?
Exactly.
When you're off.
And then when you create the profile, it emails it through to HR just to marry up that if you said something to HR, the same things in the system. And then if you make a change, it emails through to HR. So we're not missing the link anywhere of what's been put in the platform and to the mother, into the platform and to HR. And then the mother logs into the platform, and in there she has a wealth of information from practical tips to well-being advice to support, guidance. And it basically takes you the whole stage of maternity. So it's broken into 4 stages in the platform where all the advice is in the system, from being at work while you're pregnant and things to think about. I mean, it's got things like a list of things you need for a first baby. think busy mummy of like, oh gosh,
it's like an NCT, like it sounds like, yeah.
And you can access it anytime you want, whenever you like, and
like 2 in the morning.
Well, hopefully that comes after the baby's born.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah.
And then it's got going maternity leave and then preparing to return to maternity leave, where there's tips like selecting the right childcare. There's a nanny interview sheet. There's a checking back in with your wardrobe. I mean, all these advice and support and tips for the mother. And then the last bit is being back at work when you're pregnant, and some advice and support and wellbeing tips on there. And it's a 2-year license subscription, and that's to cover a woman taking the 12 months off, so 6 months at work, a year off, and 6 months back. But it doesn't matter. You can use the system as fast or as slow as you like. And it's got things in it like breath sessions to help you, manage anxiety and worry. And so it's full of so much stuff. And then based on your preferences as the mother, if you said you'd like to be contacted monthly, a month in, the system will fire an email to the line manager, and the line manager details would be populated in the system, which is also copied to the HR team, and it will say, dear, whatever the line manager's name is, dear Emma, Elizabeth has been on maternity leave for a month. She'd like to be contacted monthly. Here is her personal email address. We all GDPR compliant. We have a thing. We suggest you say the following, and then we give tips to the line manager about the right things to say. And then that's about preventing litigation or them saying the wrong things, because there are legal cases that have fallen apart where a line manager hasn't necessarily managed it in the right way. So we're training and supporting line managers in how to support that WoMo in the right way through the journey. So it supports on both sides.
Sounds brilliant. Really good. I wish I'd had it. So
thank you.
It sounds so good. So is it only organizations that can sign up?
Yeah, it is. So we're selling it to companies rather than individuals. And that's really, that whole connection with the workplace is really important. Yeah. And for the company, it supports their D&I agenda, wellbeing agenda, minimizing gender pay gap, retention of female talent. And for the mother, again, it supports wellbeing support, really looking after her as an individual. She can read and download and print the information that's helpful to her. And it's that connection. And we know that women can very frequently feel out of sight and out of mind when they're on maternity leave. And there's a reorganization in the office, or there's a new leader comes in, or they move the desks around. And all these things are really important to you when you're on maternity leave. So if we can help keep the connection and communication flow open, they'll hear about these things and be up to date. And equally, by the way, if the mother says, I don't want any contact when I'm off, she's got that option too. So we're not pushing that communication onto the mother unless she wants to, but she could opt in 3 months in and say, actually, now I want communication. So, the mother can really control how much she'd like to be in touch with the business when she's off.
Oh, it sounds, I bet you it'll really increase retention.
I think so. And I think we know that women feel very nervous coming back to work when they've been off, particularly if they've had a longer maternity leave. And so keeping that contact and encouraging kit days, and we're all about retaining that female talent and looking after those women in the business. It's so important.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it sounds so good. So where can people find out a little bit more about your organization, and if they're interested, if they want to talk, introduce you to their HR?
Yeah, sure. So
connect and follow you.
Of course, you can go to womonetwork.com, and then at the top, there's actually a banner on the top you can click on, or there's a little tab at the top that says WoMo for Business, and just click on there, and you can fill in your details, and it comes through to me or one of the team, and it'll be me. I am getting in touch with everyone at the moment personally, because I'm still in the early days and super excited. Or you can message me on LinkedIn or Instagram, wherever. Message me anywhere, and I can demo the platform to you and tell you all about it.
Yeah, it sounds like, so it's WoMo Network, isn't it, on Instagram? Is that
right? Yep.
And then Elizabeth Cowper on LinkedIn, and you've also got Facebook, haven't you? A Facebook page.
Yes, we have a Facebook page as well. And WoMo Network, or Elizabeth Cowper, which is COWPER, on LinkedIn. If you want to find me, you can find me anywhere.
Yeah, lovely. So we've had some people listen. So Lisa said that modelling self-care to our children is vital. So thank you.
It is.
I don't know if anybody's got any other questions. If anyone wants to ask any final questions, they can. But I've really enjoyed our chat. So thank you ever so much. Yeah, it's been brilliant. I've learned so much more about your organisation. It really sounds fantastic. So how long have you been selling into companies for?
Since the 1st of July. We're
Oh
fresh.
my gosh,
We're
so
fresh.
a week.
I know, we're fresh. We've been beta testing.
Not even a week.
Beta testing for 5 months, about 4 or 5 months. Which was really important to flush out the bugs and make sure that it works properly, which it does now, I promise. We had a couple of challenges on tech of just the way the registration worked and things like that, but it's all fixed. It's all working perfectly. So now we're ready to go. But also we should shout out about your brilliant Meet the WoMos interview, because if you go onto womonetwork.com, you can read Elizabeth's Meet the WoMos interview. You go to the blog section at the top, and it says Meet the WoMos, and then we can read all about Elizabeth too. And if anybody wants to do a Meet the WoMos interview, all I do is, Elizabeth, it's easy, isn't it? We email the questions. Yeah. And yeah, just get in touch and we can feature you on the website too, because we love hearing WoMo stories. We love it. And we know that that's a part that people love reading.
I liked it because I realised reading some of the other people's stories as well, how we all feel the same. I think women, when I was on maternity, what you said about women are really frightened about coming back, and I was so frightened about returning from maternity leave. But I think it's because when you get back into work, everyone seems to be quite in work mode, and they don't really talk about the challenges and how they're juggling and what the actual, how realistic it is.
It's true.
So
and also, this has been even worse this year. You've got women who went on maternity leave before the pandemic started and then never came back because they've all been at home. So let's say they went on maternity leave middle of 2019. They've been out for nearly 2 years. And so those women will be feeling even more anxious and nervous about coming back in. And I think it's important we recognize that and just make the right accommodation for these women who are going through this big change. And what I'm really beginning to see, and I'm loving this as I've been speaking to investors and speaking to potential customers, is how many men are championing this and saying, we recognize that is a challenge for women. It's never going to happen to us as a man. We know that women take that time out to have a baby and carry a baby, and this is a big deal. And I think that when we can join up, that it's not just women campaigning for women, that's really powerful too, that we all recognize the relevance of the D&I agenda and how important it is, whoever you are, to look after our people.
Actually, what you've said, on the school run, I see so many more dads.
Good.
I see loads of dads doing school run, so I think they enjoy it. They're still doing it. So yeah, I think that's a good thing. I think flexible work, the pandemic has forced everyone to be a lot more flexible, and I think, and men are enjoying it and embracing it. And so I think the more people embrace flexible working, the better it will be for mums as well. We've had a question from Beth. Just what advice would you give around part-time working? There seems to be a lack of part-time and job share opportunities at senior levels.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you can talk about the brilliant work
I can talk about. I was going to say, so
why don't you jump in first?
Yeah, I don't know if we're connected, Beth, but I launched a job board on the 7th of June, so we've been going just a few weeks longer than you, which is aimed at individuals looking for flexible and part-time work within forward-thinking organisations. So there is a few. I don't know your specific background, but there is quite a few part-time and job share opportunities on the website. So it's investinginwomen.co.uk. So you can have a look there. I can stick the link in the comments, but there is some job sharing and part-time roles at senior level. So hopefully, and things are getting added all the time. So hopefully there'll be something for you soon. And Lisa, I will I'll get Elizabeth to message you because she's interested in doing a WoMo interview.
Brilliant. Oh, amazing. I'll be thrilled. Yeah. That's great. That's so good.
Yeah.
I just want to jump on the previous question about part-time and working. I actually think there is quite a lot of good that's come out of COVID, and that might be controversial to say it, and I'm sorry if that offends anybody. But actually the reset of how we work in the workplace and the flexibility and the possibilities for job sharing and part-time working, I think are going to really start growing now, because companies who have said, no one can ever work from home. No, we can't have people working less hours, have had that proven to them that it's not true and that it can be done. So I think we've got much more open minds now of how this can work. And there are different things springing up to support this in the workplace. So I feel like it's going to get better. And I honestly think it's really changing. It's early days, but the tides are turning.
I think they are. And I think, organizations that are going to force people to go back into work, into an office 5 days a week are going to struggle because they're potentially going to lose, they probably will lose staff, and then they're going to struggle to recruit as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think it depends on the sector. I mean, there's a friend of mine who works in financial services. They're back 5 days a week too. I know 2 people in financial services and they're already back 5 days a week. So I think some sectors have sort of got straight into it, and others are, as you say, I don't think it's ever going to happen.
Be interesting to see. Interesting to see how as well maybe the graduates coming through, then what sectors they then choose to work in, because that might impact.
Yes, exactly.
Culture as well. They may not want to do 5 days a week in an office, but yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you. At least is that a question? I don't know if that's a question for you. I think it might be a question for you. Do you offer anything for men who take shared parental leave? I'm guessing with women.
That's a really super question. We don't, but so at the moment I'm purely focusing on women and WoMo's, I should say, in the business plan, we have plans for menopause, fertility treatment, and parental. So looking at parents. And it's been a really interesting discussion actually about things like adoption and same-sex couples and how does WoMo work with that. The content in WoMo would support anybody going through that, and same-sex couples, adoption, surrogacy, all that support of when a baby arrives in your life is in the WoMo platform. But, can we focus and do something for dads? It's certainly in the business plan, but I'm focusing very much on the mums for now. But I think we need to support more in the workplace on menopause, and there's a lot of work being done in that space. And also fertility treatment. There are companies now that are much more open and supportive of saying, if you're going through IVF, we support you, or we can contribute to the cost. And I think some support around that is something that we also need to think about going forward.
Yeah, because we talked about networks and things like that, employee networks. So Accenture have a good fertility support network where they offer 10 days leave for fertility treatment, and they've got a lady that champions that, and they have a meeting once a month as well.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Really good. Okay, so I don't think there is any more questions coming through. So I'll say thank you ever so much for your time, Elizabeth. So yeah, we've talked about where to connect with you, but do you want to just give everyone the name of your website and where they can connect with you one last time?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I have I love talking about this subject. You have to shut me up.
Good.
But it's WoMo Network, so www.womonetwork.com, and then we are WoMo Network on Instagram and Facebook. And I'm Elizabeth Cowper, Cowper. You can find me on LinkedIn. This has been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I will put all your links anyway in the comments. But thank you everyone for watching, for all the questions. Thank you so much for your time, Elizabeth.
Thanve you. I've loved it.
I've loved it too. See you soon. Thank you. Bye.